evening to each one of you. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we welcome each one of you to this webinar on new initiatives by Customs Department for the exporters and importers. This session is being organized under the aegis of International Business Export Committee (BCIC). We'd like to specially thank Mr. K. Ravi, Chairman of the International Business Export Committee of BCIC and Director VR Biz Solution, and also Dr. Bose Nair, Co-Chair, International Business Export Committee of BCIC and Vice President, World Trade Center, Bangalore, for curating this session for the benefit of our members at this crucial period. The speakers for today's session are Mr. M. Srinivas, IRS Chief Commissioner of Customs, Karnataka Zone, Bangalore, Mr. Ashok, IRS Principal Commissioner, Customs and Airport and Air Cargo Commissioner, Bangalore, and Mr. Amitesh Bharat Singh, IRS Additional Director General, Directorate General of Taxpayer Services, CBIC, Bangalore. This session will be moderated by Mr. K. Ravi, Chairman of the International Business Export Committee. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we express our sincere thanks to Mr. M. Srinivas, Mr. Ashok, and Mr. Amitesh Bharat Singh for accepting our invitation to address on this important subject. We would also like to thank all the participants for joining for today's session. We also would like to acknowledge and thank Tata Machinery for being a supporting partner for today's session. We request all the participants to kindly mute your mic and webcam options. This is to enhance and keep the bandwidth strong, as well as avoid any unwanted disturbance in the background. Please post your questions in the chat box only. The speakers will respond to the questions during the session, and in case time do not permit, we shall be sharing the queries to the speakers and shall revert back to you accordingly. Thanking you all once again. May I now request our President, Mr. T.R. Parshuram, to do the welcome address. Sir, over to you. Parshuram sir, can you hear us?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Please go ahead, sir. Yeah, please go ahead, sir.
Very good evening. Thank you, Mr. President. I extend a very hearty welcome to all the panelists, the speakers, and the participants. And I also congratulate Mr. Ravi and Mr. Bose Nair for organizing this wonderful webinar at a very right time. The new initiatives by Customs Department for exporters and importers. In fact, export has been one of the biggest topics that we have been discussing the recent times, because as a nation we have been very badly impacted because of the COVID onslaught, and many companies are struggling to make a survival. And it is really a time that the government of India, together with the local government, should push the export in a big way. And as a part of Make in India, I really appreciate the initiatives by the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs to have launched the inbound manufacturing program, which is a very unique in its kind, whatever I've understood. Because earlier platforms such as SEZ and various EPCG, many schemes were all focused on export-centric. Whereas this is focusing mainly on optimum utilization of the capacity. Therefore, to the extent possible, you have a flexibility to do a local manufacture or export. And even if you are not able to meet, I think the interest is waived off. That's a very brilliant move. So I'm not an expert to talk on this today. I really appreciate the august presence of Shri Ashok, IRS Principal Commissioner of Customs, Airport and Air Cargo and Commissionerate, Bangalore, and Shri Srinivas, IRS Chief Commissioner of Customs, Karnataka Zone, Bangalore, and Shri Amitesh Bharat Singh, IRS Additional Director General, Directorate General of Taxpayer Services, Department of Central Taxes, Government of India. So I'm sure these people are experts, and they have taken the time to spend time with the chambers. I am very grateful to all of you, sir. And I'm very sure that this webinar today will go in a long way to add value to our member companies. We have around 700 plus active members and largely manufacturing companies. So our biggest strength is manufacturing companies and a lot of MSMEs in Bangalore chambers. So I'm very happy to say that we constitute almost 90% of the capital employed and 95% of the investment in the state of Karnataka. And we have named many big companies are with us, sir. Be it Volvo or Bosch or Toyota or IBM or Infosys on the software side. And we have hundreds of manufacturing companies. Sir, and I'm very happy to say that I also constituted manufacturing cell for MSMEs this year under the chairmanship of Sri Indu Shekhar, head of Volvo, and Dr. Krasta, co-chair this committee. And the international business is also one such initiative under the aegis of Dr. Ravi and Mr. Bose Nair. This is basically to promote international business and appeal to the other countries how to bring business to Karnataka. In fact, Karnataka, we have been talking in many platforms, is a gold mine of several businesses, and several startups are coming and flocking to this state. Even today, we opened a MOU with Amrita Group of Institutions on incubation center, the startup promotion between Bangalore Chambers and Amrita Group of Institutions. Therefore, I'm very sure today's topic is a very hot topic because India has got a huge potential to export, and many companies have got the technical capability and also the manufacturing capability. However, these kind of initiatives are very much required at this point of time. And definitely from Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, we would like to spread this message to all our members. In fact, we are one of the oldest members in the state, and we are running our 44th year. And we have presence in all the sectors, be it manufacturing or IT, BT, pharmaceuticals, electronics, ICT, and healthcare, hospitality, travel, tourism. And we have 17 active committees led by chair and co-chair. And we have also created one cell called Start to Sustenance under the platform of Ease of Doing Business in Karnataka under the chairmanship of Sri Vidya Shankar, former Additional Chief Secretary. Yeah, so we have a lot of senior bureaucrats also supporting us, like Mr. Jairaj and Mr. Debri, the former Labor Secretary, and we have a lot of corporates also supporting our program, sir. And I'm very heartfully thankful to all of for your valuable time and support. And I'm sure this conference, this webinar will add a lot of value to our member companies. And I look forward. In fact, we are also looking at opening our offices in Japan. In fact, Japan is a very important partner for us. And the Japanese government also has shown a lot of initiatives. So I'm very keen to work with Dr. Ravi and Mr. Bose Nair. We are also looking at opening a foreign office in Tokyo and Singapore. So that we would like to spread the message of Karnataka. In fact, today morning also I was talking to the industry minister, Sri Jagdish Shettar. So he had shown a lot of passion to promote business in Karnataka. And the schemes that has been rolled out in the recent times by the government of Karnataka, especially with regard to the land bank or getting the approval through a single window channel, has been quite supportive, sir. So I'm very sure this export initiative, many people are not aware of these schemes. I'm sure that through this webinar, it will bring about a lot of awareness. And I assure you that from Bangalore Chamber, we'll do everything to support you. Thank you so much, sir. Look forward to a wonderful seminar today. Mr. Ravi, and all the very best. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President, sir, for the wonderful welcome address and the BCIC's initiatives that you have taken under your leadership. Briefing the members is quite heartening, sir. We look forward that we fulfill some of your dream projects to come through. So, ma'am, I request all the members to kindly mute your mic so that it will help us to have a better bandwidth holders. Now, I will invite Mr. K. Ravi, Chairman of the Now, I will invite Mr. K. Ravi, Chairman of the International Business Expert Committee, BCIC, to set the theme and introduce the speaker. Over to you, Ravi, sir.
Hello, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, a very, very good afternoon to all of you. First of all, let me thank our President Parshuraman for his welcome address. Uh, I welcome each one of you for today's webinar on the new initiatives by the Customs Department for exporters and importers organized by BCIC under the aegis of the International Business Expert Committee. In fact, it gives me immense pleasure and to welcome our esteemed guests for today's webinar, Sri M. Srinivas, the Chief Commissioner of Customs, Karnataka Zone, Bangalore, who will deliver the keynote address, and Sri Ashok, the Principal Commissioner of Customs, Airport and Cargo Commissariat, was to have addressed us. But due to some unavoidable circumstances, I'm told he cannot make it. But however, we have Mr. Amitesh Bharat Singh, the Additional Director General of Taxpayer Services, CBIC Bangalore, who's also the other speaker and also the panel member. In fact, when I requested our Chief Commissioner, Mr. Srinivas, to address our members, he readily accepted our invitation. Sir, thank you very much for sparing your valuable time along with your other officers of the department, sir. I would like to start off like anybody else. Today's headlines in the newspaper. Today's headlines in the newspaper speaks of exports and imports trade hit by record 60% surge in freight charges. The second one is exports face shortage of containers since ships from China is reduced by 50%. The third point was export fell by 17% while imports fell by 35% in the April-September period compared to the last year. And the fourth point was the clearance of shipments currently takes 14 to 20 days as against nearly a week earlier. This is being attributed to faceless assessments at ports. Well, the sentiments of the exporters and importers are pretty dull. I am sure our Chief Commissioner will be able to solve the last point, the fourth point, which talks about delay, to solve the issue regarding delay in the clearance. Sir, Customs, I know, has played a very important role during the COVID times. It so happened that in the month of April, when the entire country was in a lockdown, and I happened to talk to one of your commissioners who's in the airport, and he said, we are looking for some ventilators to import, and do you have any contacts? And when I was talking to him, he said, Mr. Ravi, there is nobody. We are all sitting here 24/7. We are trying to see that all the medical equipments, PPE kits, which are being imported, they come to the, we are working 24/7 and seeing that there's a smooth, all the import clearance happens smoothly. I think we should really thank the Customs Department, the way they have functioned during these COVID times. Sir, thank you very much. Now, coming back to today's topic. As you all know, today's, the very fact, I think we have nearly about 99%. We had more than 200 registrations, but we already have about 100 people who have come into the webinar. I welcome each one of them for this webinar, and I'm sure they'll go back home, or rather they are at home now. They will take back something very, very useful. Today's main topic, as mentioned by our President, is Inbound Manufacturing Scheme. This is a scheme among the bouquet of other schemes that promote investments in India and the Make in India program while enhancing ease of doing business and can potentially help in converting India into a global manufacturing hub in many sectors such as electronics, chemicals and pharmaceuticals, and even ancillary activities such as repair and refurbishment. And I'm sure it can also make India into a global e-commerce hub. The scheme, I'm sure, will also realize Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi's vision of an Atmanirbhar Bharat. The scheme under inbound manufacturing offers deferred import duty on both capital goods as well as raw material or inputs used in bonded manufacturing. As mentioned by our President, many of us, though many of you know, but there are a lot of people who really do not know. And I think that was one of the reasons why our commissioner mentioned to me, Mr. Ravi, let us focus on one topic, that is inbound manufacturing scheme. And later on, I am surely here to clarify many of the problems faced by the exporters and importers, and also some of the new initiatives which are privy only to the commissioner right now, which people do not know. Probably, I'm sure he will share with us what are the new initiatives for the benefit of the importers and exporters. Now, if the finished goods are cleared in the domestic market, the import duty on raw material used becomes payable, but without any burden of interest. Now, I think that is very, very important. Basically, this deferment scheme looks very attractive. Unlike other schemes such as SEZ and EOU, which are largely export-centric, the present scheme aims at providing for efficient capacity utilization. The scheme also envisages a minimum physical interface with officials, and the monitoring of units under the scheme is entirely record-based and risk-based and thus non-intrusive. I'm sure our commissioner will also highlight, I think they are expecting the end of the month for the launch of the faceless assessments across the country. Bangalore has already started off, but I'm sure across the country, I'm expecting the Prime Minister or Prime Minister to launch this particular scheme. Now, before I would not want to take much time telling about the schemes, but I'm sure our commissioner will and his other colleague will surely tell us about what is the scheme about and how we can take advantage of this particular scheme. And before I request our commissioner to deliver his keynote address, I would like to make a formal introduction. Mr. Mandalika Srinivas, the Chief Commissioner of Customs, Karnataka Zone, belongs to the 1988 batch of the IRS, Customs and Indirect Taxes. He holds a master's degree in Marine Sciences with Marine Living Resources as specialization from Andhra University, Visakhapatnam. Mr. Srinivas has held various positions in the Customs Department, and I would like to mention some of them. He was the Assistant Commissioner Central Excise at Cochin and Bangalore. Again, Assistant Commissioner Customs at Calicut. He also served as a Deputy Commissioner Central Excise and Customs at Ballari, Karnataka, and was the Deputy Director of Intelligence in the Coimbatore. He was the Additional Commissioner of Central Excise and Customs at Coimbatore, Mumbai, and also Jawaharlal Nehru Customs House, Nhava Sheva. I'm told this particular customs house is the biggest customs house in the country in terms of containers handled, documents filed, and revenue generated. He was the Commissioner Appeals, Central Excise and Service Tax, Hyderabad and Chennai, and also the Principal Commissioner of Central Excise, Service Tax, GST, Hyderabad. Prior to this current assignment, he was the Principal ADG, DG Systems, Chennai. He has also held various special assignments, and few of them are member of the All India Committee for Valuation of Goods Manufactured by Job Workers. He was the member of the All India Committee for revision of MRP-based valuation. He was the co-convener of Media and Entertainment Sectoral GST Group, and also the member of State Screening Committee Anti-Profiteering, Telangana. Now, I think these are some of the positions held by Mr. Srinivas. Sir, we welcome you once again. The other speaker today is Mr. Amitesh Bharat Singh. Mr. Amitesh Bharat Singh studied economics at Delhi University and international trade at IIFT New Delhi. He has also completed the course on public policy and management from IIM Bangalore. Mr. Amitesh Bharat Singh was appointed to the IRS Customs and Central Excise in 1997. He currently holds the rank of an Additional Director General Commissioner, and his present responsibilities, among other things, include monitoring, evaluating, and review of taxpayer services, related efforts of the CBIC field offices in Karnataka and Kerala, and an active involvement in the domain of taxpayers consultations and grievance redressal efforts. And I think he's the right person today to take care of your grievances. He's occupied various positions in the various customs, service tax, and central excise formations in India, including in the Directorate of Revenue Intelligence at Delhi. He served as a diplomat, being stationed as the First Secretary Commerce at the Indian High Commission from 2011 to 2014. Key achievements of Mr. Singh includes being awarded the Finance Minister's Gold Medal for the Best Probationer and the certificate from the Secretary General WCO for exceptionally meritorious services rendered for the Customs Administration in India, and certificate of recognition by Chief Commissioner Central Excise at Bangalore on the Central Excise Day in 2008. Yes, I think we have two eminent and very learned gentlemen here as guests today. I'm sure all of us in the next 1 hour will be able to hear a lot from them. Now, can I request Chief Commissioner of Customs, Mr. Srinivas, to kindly deliver his keynote address, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ravi. Respected Sri Parshuraman, President BCIC, Mr. Bose Nair, Mr. Ravi, and my learned colleague Amitesh Bharat Singh, and dear participants. Hope I am audible. Can I continue?
You are, sir. You're
Yeah.
fine.
Sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, perfect, perfect.
Thank you. Friends, I was told that the main topic for the discussion is with regard to the inbound manufacturing. Whereas I think the moods and the minds of the people are dominated by the issues related to faceless assessment. We will certainly come to that, but let's stick to the main topic, that is inbound manufacturing. As Mr. Parashuraman rightly put it, Karnataka is a very, very important state with regard to the various industries and the economic growth and the contribution to the GDP, mainly because you have about 16% of the Fortune 500 companies located in Karnataka, and over 500 MNCs are actually operating from Karnataka. And the general atmosphere, the working atmosphere, etc., is very, very congenial, and the industry can thrive very well. And the inbound manufacturing scheme, if it is adequately explained and the manufacturers, investors are convinced, I'm sure they would subscribe to this particular scheme, which is a very, very simple and extremely beneficial scheme. The inbound manufacturing is basically manufacturing in a bonded premises in terms of Section 65 of the Customs Act. This is nothing new, but the whole scheme, which was conceived with effect from 1st of October 2019, is a very, very simplified scheme which ensures ease of doing business. You are aware that there was a scheme conceived way back in 1980 called 100% export oriented unit scheme, and the software units resorting to the same scheme are known as software technology parks. There are hardware technological parks, and there are biotech technology parks, etc., with the same scheme. But the inbound manufacturing scheme, which came into existence from 1st of October 2019, is also with the same objectives, like to boost the exports, to promote the Make in India concept, to bring in the latest technology into the country, to upgrade the skills of the workers, and of course to generate the employment. This particular scheme is simple in the sense that there are no procedural hurdles as in the case of EOUs. In the case of EOU, just for reference purpose, one has to obtain a letter of permit from the Development Commissioner of the SEZ, local jurisdictional SEZ. They have to execute a letter of undertaking. They need to execute a bond plus bank guarantee, and they need to obtain CT3 certificates and comply with the related procedural things. Whereas in the inbound manufacturing, the procedures are much, much simpler, and they are as in respect of any normal manufacturer, except that they need to obtain a permission for manufacture in under Section 65 and also take a registration as warehouse for the premises under Section 58. In the case of special warehouse goods, it is under Section 58A. In both cases, the application for applying for obtaining the permission under Section 65 and a license under Section 58 of the Customs Act has been so much simplified, and it is a unified and a single application with very simple information sought for. And for your information, if I cite some examples, you will understand the degree of simplicity and the ease of doing business. In the recent past, during the complete lockdown period, the Bangalore City Commissionerate had given the inbound manufacturing permission, both under Section 58 and 65 together, in just 3 days' time. And without visiting our office and by submitting all the relevant documents through emails. The party's name is Wildcraft, and it was also followed by another major manufacturer, that is Wistron, manufacturing the iPhones. These parties merely contacted over telephone, submitted the application online and submitted relevant documents, and we required 1 day for physical verification, which is a mandatory requirement, and thereafter the third day the solvency certificate was produced. On submitting the solvency certificate, the inbound manufacturing facility permission and license together were granted. This shows the simplicity and the easy procedure which was put in place and the procedures that are being followed by the Karnataka Customs. Basically, the scheme is very, very attractive because there is no LOP, letter of permit, required to be taken, and you deal with only one department, that is Customs Department. There is no need to interact with any other department to subscribe to the inbound manufacturing. There is no LUT requirement. There is no CT3, and the goods from the domestic area, tariff area, can be procured as in the case of any other unit, and all GST compliant inputs, raw materials, capital goods can be obtained. There is no net requirement to achieve any net foreign exchange. There is no prescribed percentage of goods to be exported. In the case of EOU, there is a percentage of goods which need to be exported. In this scheme, there is no such requirement. The inputs, raw materials, and capital goods can be procured without payment of duty, and they can be utilized for manufacture in the premises for which the permission for inbound manufacturing is obtained and registered as a warehouse under Section 58 through that I already mentioned a single application. The goods, if manufactured, if they are exported completely, 100% if they are exported, the entire duty involved on the inputs are remitted and there is no customs duty liability at all. In case the goods manufactured are removed either 100% or a part of it to the domestic tariff area, the manufacturer need to pay the duty of customs at the time of removal of the manufactured goods to the domestic tariff area, and that too without payment of interest. So there are two major benefits for this scheme. One, there is a deferment of customs duty. It need not be paid at the time of import. It can be paid at the time of removal of the goods manufactured, and the liability will be restricted to the liability to the extent of the imported goods contained in the goods manufactured and removed to DTA. And the second most important benefit under the scheme is complete waiver of the interest liability. However, if the inputs are capital goods or raw materials which are procured by a particular manufacturer, and if they are removed as such to the domestic tariff area, then the importer has to pay the customs duty, and in such case even the interest liability arises. The waiver of interest is granted only in respect of the manufacturers who conduct certain operations on the inputs and then remove them in a different form. The expression that manufacturing and other operations includes certain operations which may not qualify themselves as manufacture, like processing of agriculture produce or galvanization of the some parts. These things may not qualify as a manufacture because the input and output are the same. Only nature, a minute specification of that would change. Manufacture, as you are aware, that it should involve emergence of a new and different product having distinct name, character, and use. So the scheme is not limited for such major operations which completely change the nature of the inputs which are procured. It can be given even in respect, it can be extended even in respect of the processes which qualify as other operations which are beyond the meaning and scope of the manufacturer. The goods, the another way, very important advantage of the scheme is once the capital goods imported are installed in the premises, there is no time limit before which they need to be cleared. Similarly, once the imported goods on which the duty deferment has been enjoyed under the scheme are brought in and duly accounted for in the premises registered, there is no time limit before which the goods have to be subject to processing. And so these duty deferment, waiver of interest, no time limit, no prescribed percentage of goods for export, all these schemes makes this particular scheme very distinct, simple, and very attractive. The manufacturers who are subscribing to the inbound manufacture would also require to procure the inputs and the capital goods domestically. In such case, they just need to procure the GST compliant goods under the GST invoice. They can take the credit of they can take the ITC of the GST paid on the goods received. And when the goods manufactured are removed, there will be two components. One, the customs duty liability to the extent of the imported component of the goods contained in the finished goods which are being cleared, and the GST liability on the goods being supplied. The removal of goods by the manufacturer of the inbound manufacturer to the DTA qualifies itself as a supply under GST law, and if it is within the state where the inbound manufacturer is located, it would be intrastate, and in case it is supplied to another state or union territory, it would qualify as intrastate supply, and accordingly the GST law need to be complied with. Another major flexibility given to ensure the 100% capacity utilization of the capital goods installed, the capacity of the manufacturing facility is there is no bar in procuring fully exempted goods either on import or procure from domestically. The manufacturer is also permitted to carry on parallelly manufacture of the goods without utilizing the imported components and without utilizing the imported capital goods. In such case, they can just follow the GST law and utilize their full capacity and comply with the GST law and need not bother about any of the provisions of the customs law and the liabilities. The movement of the goods from one inbound manufacturer to another inbound manufacturer is permitted, and the export of goods when the export is under the normal export documentation by filing the shipping bill, whereas if the goods are removed to the domestic tariff area, they need to file an export bill of entry, because a part of the goods, the imported component of the goods is requiring the following the customs procedures. Therefore, an export bill of entry need to be filed. This particular scheme, as you appreciate, it will support the Make in India. It will promote the Make in India, and it supports the objectives of Invest India department of the Ministry of Commerce. So the government is giving a lot of importance for this scheme, and I request all the participants to know more. If you want to know more about it, you can approach our help desk or send an email to us, and our email is in the public domain. You can log on to our website. And in addition to that, we also created recently a WhatsApp communication facility, which is available for receiving any kind of communication, either related to inbound manufacturing or in relation to the faceless assessment. The number for the WhatsApp communication is 948 00 29701. 948 00 29701. I think with this, I would like to conclude my presentation with regard to inbound manufacturing, and I would like to switch over to the second important aspect, which is really in relation to the various recent initiatives concerned with the importers and exporters, mainly importers, and of course many of them are related even to the exporters. I can just mention that these recent initiatives concerned with the importers and exporters can be titled as paperless, contactless, and faceless. What is this about? The department has put in place a large number of functionalities and the procedures which will ensure ease of doing business through paperless and contactless communication and processing, and carrying on the various business operations through electronic medium. It's not merely the communication, but also the complete business process is online and through electronic medium and through the virtual medium. They range from granting electronic out of charge, giving a PDF form of the final bill of entry, or an electronic gate pass, and these documents would reach the concerned customs broker or the importer by email, and as well as the custodian, and they need not have a printout from the department. Earlier, the legibility of the document is a issue, and delay in giving the printouts is an issue, and all these things are addressed by giving this faster granting a communication of the electronic out of charge, giving a PDF document by electronic mode, and the authenticity of these communications and documents can be verified through a simple app which is freely downloadable. It's called IceTrack, and there is a QR code in these documents, the electronic out of charge or electronic gate pass are on the bill of entry, there is a QR code, and with the help of the ice track, if one scans it, they would know the result indicating the concerned details. So this is a security measure, and this provides the confidence as well as the authenticity of the documents. Similarly, on the export side, the department introduced the electronic let export order, again the electronic gate pass as well as the electronic final shipping bill. These are exactly similar to the import related electronic out of charge, electronic gate pass, and electronic final bill of entry. And the ice track again is helpful in checking the authenticity of these documents. On the examination front, the department introduced ice tabs. This is a tool, this is a tab available in the hands of the examination officer, and they can come, then and there, take the pictures and other details and also feed the relevant examination report, and it just gets connected and reaches the assessing officers so that the rest of the process can be carried on. And this is another initiative of the department which ensures ease of doing business. The other very important the functionalities which are put in place to ensure the paperless and contactless process are the automated debit of the bond account after the assessment. Now the ICS has a functionality linked to the ICE Gate. When a particular import takes place and the conditions are fulfilled, the relevant bond gets debited automatically. Once the import document is completed, it gets debited automatically, and after the assessment, you can check how much is debited, etc., in your account. The most of the importers nowadays are being encouraged to avail this facility by executing a running bond so that it automatically debits and they need not execute a separate bond for each and every consignment. The importers can register their authorized dealer code and bank account through IceGate, and the simplified registration, the importers and exporters can register themselves on the IceGate through a simple mechanism. They can manage their bank accounts, they can change their required bank accounts through the IceGate. They can view the ledger balances through IceGate. The IGST refund can be verified, and the queries which are issued, they can be accessed and they can reply through. Further, in the courier side, recently, just on 20th of October, a contactless delivery of international courier has been put in place. The KYC can be through OTP. The acknowledgement of the international parcel delivered can be through OTP. So these kind of automations are ensuring paperless and contactless business process. And then the most important, the initiative under the Turant Customs is the faceless assessment. As you are aware, the word Turant means quickness and speedy processing. And faceless assessment is a next generation reform in the process of assessment and customs clearance of the imported goods. In the faceless assessment, the concept is the assessment document can reach an assessing officer at a different place other than the place of port of import. You have to appreciate one point here, that it's not that all the bills of entry filed for all the imported goods are being referred for the face assessment. About 70 to 75% of the consignments are facilitated through RMS, and For those consignments where there is no assessment and examination, the bill would not go to the faceless assessment groups at all. It is only those which are non-facilitated bills of entry would land in one of the faceless assessment group. It could be anywhere in the country. You may be aware that the first pilot run of the faceless assessment was initiated from 14th of August 2019 at Chennai for Chapter 84 alone. Subsequently, the other customs locations like Bangalore, Delhi, Ahmedabad, Visakhapatnam, and Trivandrum, they were also put in place as a part of the trial run. And initially, they were restricted to the same station, and thereafter, the All India rollout of the faceless assessment was commenced, and the first phase was between Bangalore and Chennai. And the first phase of All India rollout was commenced on 8th of June 2020. Second phase from 3rd of August, third phase from 15th September, fourth phase from 1st of October, and we expect it is proposed to roll out the Pan-India faceless assessment with effect from 31st of October. At each stage, when it started first phase, it was just between Bangalore and Chennai, and with the second phase, some more locations like Mumbai, Delhi were added, and thereafter in the third phase, Ahmedabad, Kolkata, other locations were added. Like that, at each phase, step by step, more and more locations were brought under the faceless assessment. The idea is to ensure that not only the officers of the department and the systems are tuned to meet the new, get adjusted and accustomed to the new system, but also give an opportunity for the stakeholders to understand the new system and accustom themselves and raise up to the requirements of the faceless assessment. The objectives of the faceless assessment are to ensure objectivity and uniformity in assessment so that it will ensure transparency and it will protect the interest of revenue as well as the interest of the stakeholders. Once the objectivity, transparency and uniformity are achieved, it would automatically ensure speedy clearance. Yes, there are challenges. Any new system will have little time for both the department as well as the stakeholders to understand and accustom themselves and get into the groove. And initial teething troubles are inevitable, which we are passing through, but they are being addressed in a very, very rapid manner. And we are extremely happy that day before yesterday, we crossed a very, very important milestone. That is, through faceless assessment, the department assessed 2 lakh bills of entry, and the unallocated bills of entry at the national level were just about 6,000. This is 6,000 at the national level is a very, very meager number for the information of all the members who are participating. And passing through this 2 lakhs is a commendable milestone, and we feel that the system is stabilizing and all the issues are being very, very rapidly being addressed. And I'm extremely happy that not only the customs brokers and importers, but also the officers are quickly understanding the nuances of this system and getting into the a very rapid processing and ensuring speedy clearance. For ensuring that the certain documents are defaced or the bonds are registered, etc., we have created Turant Suvidha Kendras at each of the customs location as a corollary and as a support to the faceless assessment, because under faceless assessment, the idea is the officers need not meet the stakeholders for the purpose of assessment. However, certain processes require submission of documents like the country of origin certificate, or they may have to submit the bond and bank guarantee, etc. For that, this Turan Suvidha Kendra would be of immense help, and they are put in place not only at the centers where facial assessment is being undertaken, but also at every customs location. And every Turan Suvidha Kendra is adequately manned, and we have created a separate email ID, provided the land number, and now we intend to even provide a WhatsApp communication facility for each of the Turan Suvidha Kendra in Bangalore Customs, so that the communication to the Suvidha Kendra need not be restricted only for acceptance of the documents, etc. It can actually act as a help desk as well. Another major initiative which helps in this paperless, contactless, and also to support this faceless assessment is the facility of conducting the personal hearings through virtual medium. Initially, the conduct of the personal hearings through video conferencing or virtual medium was made optional, but subsequently now it is made mandatory, so that the people need not travel, they can save their time, and whatever is recorded during the proceedings of the virtual personal hearing will be emailed to the person who has deposed their version, the noticee or the concerned stakeholder, and they can add or they can amend, they can even supplement, they can submit additional documents within 3 days. Within 3 days, if there is no response, it will be considered that the version recorded and forwarded to the concerned stakeholder who has participated in the personal hearing is final, and based on that the final decision can be taken. I think we have spent adequate time in talking about the both the subjects, the inbound manufacture as well as the introductory part of the faceless assessment, but more can be, I think, discussed during the interactive session. Instead of listening to me, I think a question and answer session would be of more beneficial, because that will bring out the actual difficulties from the stakeholders and the version of the department and the clarifications from the department. So over to you, Ravi. I request you to, I think, carry on, monitor the Q&A session. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Srinivas, sir. Thank you very much for your excellent presentation on the scheme and also the new initiatives taken by the department. I was really very happy when you mentioned about some of the initiatives like WhatsApp group you created. You wanted to also have these virtual media personal hearing, because many of us are used to these personal hearings. Probably the next step would be personal hearing on a virtual media. And also, you also mentioned that we are also addressing
which is a prominent Indian journalist. One, Ramo.
Hello.
Mark.
Okay, these are all the.
No, request you kindly mute your mic, Manjula.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, sir.
So I'm very happy to hear that you're taking a lot of action, rapid manner, particularly regarding concerns of the members. Now, in fact, I find a flood of questions coming up in the chat box, and I also find Mr. Amitesh Bharat Singh is already answering some of these, and I think that itself shows how proactive you people are. And for the benefit of our members, I would also like to mention that Mr. Srinivas is the team leader for the National Assessment Center for Customs Group 3, that is Chapter 50 to 71. In fact, he also mentioned to me that since he's part of the entire, he's the team leader for this particular 50 to 71, he would also want feedback from the members as to what they would like to get out of that, so that at the end of the day, whatever action or whatever effort put by the department, it should be very useful for to the members per se. And I think the 2 lakh bill of entry milestone again, sir, is a really a commendable thing. And I think Bangalore has always been a leader when it comes to new initiative, new things. And I think, and I'm sure we have always been at the forefront for all this. And then regarding the, sir, as regards the questions raised by our members, so I would like to know, like, I think Mr. Amitesh Bharat Singh can also come on live so that we can see you, sir. And also, would you like to take these chats one after the other, or would you want people to ask questions virtually? Sir, please let us know, sir, which would be the ideal one.
I'll try taking them on one after the another in the chat as they are coming. So let me start.
Can we start from the top,
Yeah,
sir?
so I'm starting from the top. In fact,
I think the aero renewal procedures must be simplified.
hold on. Let me get to where I was.
Okay, please.
Okay. Let me first say good afternoon to my Chief Commissioner, Shri Mandlika Srinivas, right? And good afternoon to Mr. Parshuraman, your President, BCIC. Good afternoon to you, all the people who have taken out time to be with us here today, and Mr. Bose. And now I think with that out of the way, I'll get on with the questions one by one with the permission of Chief Commissioner, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead, Mitesh.
Okay. So I'll try and take as many as possible here, in the sense that some of it may require a detailed discussion, but those which appear to my mind to be simpler and can be readily answered very quickly, I'll start with them. Basically, the first one which has come on the issue of in-bond manufacturing is when one bonded unit is transferring the finished goods manufactured by them to another bonded manufacturing unit, whether GST is payable. And this is by Mr. Kundapalli Jagannath. The reply to that is a short one. So as far as the transfer of goods from one bonded warehouse to another is concerned, especially if both of them are licensed under 65, or if one of them is a 58 operation, another is a 65 operation, then basically have a rule, look at rules 11 and 13 of the MOOWR number 2 regulations, that is manufacture and in bond operations number 2 regulations. It happens in case of a bonded, I'm assuming that these are goods on which they are either the warehouse goods themselves or goods on which the bill of entry for home consumption is not yet filed. I mean, that is essentially what is implied by bond to bond transfer, right? So if that is so, then please have a look at rules 11 and 30. It says that one warehouse can transfer goods from one to the second one, and the second one can receive it from the first one. So both the things are possible. Now, as far as GST is concerned, please have a look at the GST Amendment Act, which was done in 2018. Have a look at clause 32 of that, by which we amended Schedule 2 of the GST Act. CGST Act, that is what I'm referring to. Just give me a second to kind of go to that particular amendment which I'm talking about. I'll kind of read it out to you so that, yeah, so it is there. So it says in Schedule 3 of the Principal Act, it has done 2 insertions at number 7 and number 8. Number 8A is supply of warehouse goods to any person before clearance for home consumption. Now, when we say clearance for home consumption, we take it that a bill of entry under Section 68 of the Act, Customs Act, would be filed. So here we have a situation of it being a bond-to-bond transfer. And I have already qualified my answer by saying that this is a situation where you have yet not filed a bill of entry for home consumption under 68, right? So that being the case, the GST, as far as GST is concerned, it's already been put into Schedule 3. So that means For the moment time till the goods are cleared by the second warehouse, there would not be any GST liability, because it says before the clearance for home consumption. So I said, I think I'm as clear as I can be, given both the situations. First one of rules 11 and 13 in the manufacture and other operations in a warehouse regulations. Number two, no customs duty is liable till the time it's just a bond-to-bond transfer. Secondly, if there is no situation where you're filing a bill of for home consumption, that is a bill of entry under Section 68 of the Act, because it has been put after 18 in Schedule 3, the GST would not also be chargeable there. So I think that's the clearest reply I can give. Next one is are there, hold on, where's one bonded, so this was one. Second is when one bond, okay, GST that I've done. Suppose sign norms are not available, there then are required. I'm not able to get this question clearly, but what I understand is Mr. Sanjeet Kashyap is asking me, suppose if there is a situation where the SIAN norms are not available, then can he kind of substitute what he is required to declare under Rule 423 with whatever the DGFT has devised as the standard input-output norms. Now, let us understand what the requirements in law are and why this particular requirement has been put in place. And then the reply itself would be very clear. I mean, you don't really you require me to make the reply, but still I'll make it here. Let me go back to the regulations itself. Notification number 69 of 2019, custom entry dated 1st October 2019. Now, if I come to Rule 4, which talks about eligibility for application for operating under these regulations, and come to basically 4, sub-rule 2, sub-rule 3. So the person who has got a license to operate in an inbound manufacturing facility is supposed to inform the input-output norms wherever considered necessary for raw materials and the final products, and to inform the revised input-output norms in case of a change therein. Now, let us realize as to why this condition has been put in, and what is implied by wherever considered necessary. Now, as far as the inbound manufacturing is concerned, there are, if you look at the Circular 34 of 19, and as the Chief Commissioner just mentioned, in order to have a better capacity utilization, in order to make best of the facilities which have been created, the board has allowed, or the government has allowed, for a person who has got a license under Section 65 to also, clear warehouse goods, and warehouse goods have a particular meaning in the Customs Act. These are goods for which the yellow bill of entry has been filed, which are like entered into a warehouse. So those goods can be cleared from a Section 65 facility can be cleared from the Section 65 facility. And this is principally on the realization that any unit or any entity which is licensed under Section 65 also happens to be an entity under Section 58. So it's not necessary that all the goods which are the warehouse goods in your facility be treated to manufacture and other operations. So you could also clear some of the warehouse goods for domestic clearances. You could straight away take the warehouse goods and file a bill of entry under 68 for that, or you export them out of the country without having engaged in any processing or any kind of a manufacturing activity on them. Okay, so that is the position that we have. Now, what we want essentially, now let us realize that when we are talking about inbound manufacturing, manufacturing, it's a duty waiver scheme. I mean, we are not really talking about a duty exemption scheme. And in fact, today we are very careful about talking about any outright duty exemption schemes, given the kind of challenges that we have seen in terms of WTO compliance, right? So this particular scheme definitely is not is essentially a duty waiver scheme. So what happens when you bring in
Duty deferment scheme.
yeah, duty deferment scheme. Sorry, yeah, duty deferment scheme is the correct description for it. So what happens is you bring the imported goods, you file a bill of entry for inbonding them, and these goods move into your warehouse and they stay there, either for being utilized in the production process, or being exported, or being cleared for home consumption as such. Now, duty in this situation is charged whenever the goods are being cleared for home consumption. Either they themselves are getting cleared for home consumption, or they would be forming a part of some finished goods or output from the bonded warehouse, which is achieved by engaging in manufacturing and other operations, and on a pro rata basis. So basically, depending upon how much is the amount of good that you have consumed in making the particular output from your bonded warehouse, based on that amount of consumption, you would be required at the moment you are clearing the goods out of the bonded warehouse to file both a bill of entry and to pay the deferred duties of customs on it. So essentially, and of course, there are other rules for accounting for scrap. So if you see it all together, whatever be the amount of goods that you have warehoused, each unit of that and has to be accounted for in form of some or the other disposal. So it could be the goods have been cleared for home consumption. It could be that goods have been consumed while making goods for other goods for home consumption. That is, they are being subjected to the manufacturing process or other processes. It could be that the warehouse goods are simply exported as such, or it could be that the warehouse goods are being cleared for home consumption again. So we essentially are looking at 4 different situations. And then again, when you are talking about manufacturing, then there is a definite possibility that some waste would also be generated. So we have 2 situations of dealing with waste, right? So essentially, if the goods are themselves being cleared for home consumption, you have to essentially look at Section 61(2) for treatment of waste. And again, if you are it's not that the goods which you bring into the warehouse and which are not being used or intended to be used in manufacturing and other operations, they are treated slightly differently in the sense of the period for which the goods would remain warehoused, in the sense of whether for goods which are being cleared as such to the domestic market for home consumption, whether they would be attracting some interest or not. So basically, as far as interest is concerned, look at section 61(2). So if that is the period where you would be free to keep those goods without attracting any interest for that period, for that length of period, which Section 61(2) permits. As far as waste is concerned, then we are basically talking about a situation. Hold on. As far as waste is concerned, then we are essentially talking about 65(2). So it says that in course of any operations permissible in relation to the warehouse goods, if there is any waste or refuse, there are 2 provisions which apply. If the whole or part of the goods resulting, so resultant goods, if they are exported, the import duty is remitted on the quantity of the warehouse goods contained in so much of waste or refuse as has arisen from the operations carried out in the warehouse. If the waste or refuse is either destroyed or duty is paid on the waste or refuse, treating it as if the waste and refuse itself has been imported into India in that form, right? So basically, if you are exporting goods and whatever waste arises in course of export activity, if you destroy them, there is the entire duty of customs which was deferred will be remitted. Or the other option is that you treat the import itself as you treat the quantity of waste itself as being imported in the form of waste, and you pay the duty on the value arrived at in terms of section 15 on the rates which will apply in terms of section 14 and 15. The valuation under 14, rate of duty under 15. Now, if the goods are being cleared for home consumption and getting manufactured in a bonded warehouse, then the waste, if there is any waste which has arisen, then you remember that some of the waste would also contain some of the warehouse goods. Whatever warehouse goods that you have used up, some part of it would also be contained in this waste, as it would have been contained in the waste relating to the export portion. So the import duty shall be charged on this particular waste which has arisen from operations carried out in relation to the goods cleared for home consumption. So ultimately what we are doing is, in sum, having given this background, what we are doing is totaling up the quantities of imported warehouse goods that you have brought in and trying to account for every unit of it, either in the form of an export or clearance for home consumption, or export as such, or cleared to home consumption as such, plus whatever be the amount of waste which is required, which you may be generating. Waste exported or destroyed, then the duty is remitted. If waste is relating to the goods which are cleared, to the resultant goods which are cleared for home consumption, then you have to pay the import duty which was deferred initially on the goods which now have gone into making your resultant output. So essentially, to do all this, your input-output norms are required. So input-output norms are basically when the rule says that wherever necessary. So necessary would be the conditions where your goods are getting cleared to the home for home consumption. That is when you are filing a bill of entry for the warehouse goods contained in the resultant output in terms of section 68 of the Customs Act. Now, the urging, it is left to you to declare the input-output norms based on your efficiencies, your peculiar manufacturing processes. Remember, if you adopt some other norms, which may be generic. So this is why it has not been called a standard input-output norm. It doesn't go by the nomenclature or the nomens of SION. It simply goes by input-output norms. These are the input-output norms which are case-specific, situation-specific. So if you adopt maybe some other manufacturer's input-output norms, at the end of the day, when the audit happens, you will have to probably, account for the warehouse goods which you have shown as being consumed in the records that you're maintaining in the form which is appended to Form B, which is appended to Notification 69 of 29, and whatever you may have as stock on that particular day when audit decides to take stock of a situation. So the urging for you is to kind of discover these input-output norms, okay, because these are essentially used to determine your output liabilities in terms of customs duty. As Srinivas sir said, each one of you would be taking out a license under Section 65. By default, would be also engaging in an interstate trade. Now, because you would be importing, and by imports are defined as being interstate trade, so you would be compulsorily required to take a registration under GST, under Section 64 of the GST, 24 subsection 1. So that is what would apply in your scenario. And I'm coming to the second question. Input-output norms are yours to declare. Whatever you are comfortable with, broadly, you must be able to account for whatever you have imported and whatever disposal may have been made of the goods that you have imported and warehoused, either in the form of being cleared as such, in the form of being exported, or in the form of being cleared to the contained in the resultant goods which are cleared to domestic market. Now, somebody asked me a question here about job work. So essentially, next question I'll come to is the question on job work. Basically, no, he asked me a question on whether the repair of capital goods is possible. Now, essentially, when we look at this scheme, it allows you to bring both goods of both nature. It may be goods which are capital goods. It may be goods which are non-capital goods, or essentially which are inputs in terms of the broad phraseology that we have in the GST Acts. Now, given that situation, it would be unrealistic to assume that your capital goods would never require repair or some kind of an attending or tending to. So, but if you see the kind of returns which are prescribed for you to make in terms of the Circular 34 of 2019, it does say that you have the permission to send your goods on job work. Now, what is job work? Now, there doesn't exist a definition under the Customs Act for job work. So essentially, we have to go in for a contemporaneous understanding of what a job work might mean. And a job work, thankfully for us, has been a concept which has been there for a while in Central Excise, and currently it's also there in the GST Act. So Section 268 of the CGST Act defines a job work to mean any treatment or a process undertaken by a person on goods belonging to a registered person, and the expression job worker shall be construed accordingly. So in case of a situation where a capital good would need a repair, now without handing over possession, that's the situation a job work imagines. The possession always remains with the person who owns the goods, and is not transferring the possession to anybody else, though the custody temporarily may be transferred to the job worker to work upon the goods. So here it may be possible for you to send the goods on job work, but remember, when you are sending the goods on job work, and because you would also compulsorily be registered under this GST Acts, Section 24 I have referred to, you would be bound by the job work provisions given therein. So you have to send, and then you have to bring them back again. Now, some of these questions probably we have already flagged. Some will be taking up today to flag again to the CBIC for good, clear replies. But as far as the repair of capital goods is concerned, probably this is a position that you can go with, that yes, as far as in-bond manufacture is concerned, job work is certainly permissible whenever, I'm also assuming that, no, the one point is whether capital goods could be sent out to the job workers' premises and be permitted to be installed therein and, to be worked upon. Now, this is a situation to which I really don't have a clear answer as of yet, because this is something which we have already flagged to. I'm only talking about a situation where there is a capital good in your premises, it's gone bad, so it's being sent to some other person to be repaired and brought back, and not with a purpose to being installed and getting used there. So as far as that is concerned, there is nothing very clearly specified in the rules. I'm really not in a position to say yes or no to that. But yes, if you want just a repair to happen, it should be possible through the job work route to go in for the repair of the capital good. As soon as the job work on that or the repair activity is completed, please bring it back to your own particular warehouse, because ultimately, remember the thing that they are bonded goods. You have a responsibility to the customs authority as well, much beyond the GST authorities. These are goods on which duty has not been paid. So whenever you may be moving the goods out for repair, do enter them in Form B, in form connected to the Circular 34 of 2019. And I believe and I assume that it is also in interest to kind of bring those capital goods back to your premises so as to be able to engage into productive activity using them. So
I would like to supplement that the capital goods includes its spare parts as well as accessories. So in case there is a repair, if invariably the imported capital goods would be requiring the components and parts, spares, and etc. Again, from the same source from which they procured these capital goods. So that is also permissible, and that goes with the. I think that answers their main question. And in case they wanted to send the capital goods back to the overseas supplier for major overhauling and repair, that is also permissible. So the law provides for it.
Mr. Abhite, I'm just told that the commissioner has got another appointment at the 5:30. What I would suggest to you, can we have some few concluding remarks from him and then we come back to you? Is that fine?
Okay.
Yeah. Mr. Srinivas, please, sir, I think some issues have come regarding faceless assessment and a couple of other things. Probably if you can address some of these and then probably
Yeah.
we will continue later on.
Certainly, and I think the concerned person can raise that. I'm unable to see on my. I think instead of searching for those queries in the list, better why not the concerned person raise that and then we can reply to it.
Okay. So can I request our members, whosoever is interested, can you please raise your hand so that we can allow you to ask the questions directly to the Chief Commissioner? Can the Secretariat help? Mr. Prithvi, can you help us? Hello, Prithvi?
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, there are 3 buttons. No, there is an option there to raise hand.
Okay. What I'll suggest, sir, probably you can give some of your remarks based on. You want me to read some of them? I can.
Yeah, please read out. Please read out. One by one. I think perhaps.
Okay. I think some of them are inbound scheme only. And then can we?
What now?
Okay, we are manufacturer and export to SEZ unit. DOE is required in INR or US dollar as per GST law. Please explain. I think it's not relevant for this.
Mr. Ravi, in general, I would like to mention that the number of concerns with related to faceless assessment, you have already read out few of them from the media. I think you have mentioned about the today's newspaper column that there is a general delay of 4 to 5, 6 of 6 days earlier, and now it is a little beyond.
Yes.
So I would like to make certain general remarks, and that I think would clarify the position. First of all, the faceless assessment system is new to everyone. If the newness is causing a little delay from the department side, I can understand the difficulty from the stakeholder side and the employees of the customs brokers and customs brokers themselves, and maybe importers as well. We understand that during the lockdown period, a large number of people have lost their jobs, and some of them left by their choice to their hometowns, etc. And now they came back and joined. And when they came back, there is a huge demand from many of the major the customs brokers, and as well as some of the importers, their employees as well, who knows this documentation in relation to the import. I think this is a very, very important aspect which one has to understand. This is the reason why I think there are a large number of mistakes in the documentation. The filing of the bill of entry is incomplete. Description is not proper. CTH is not properly given. They are not mentioning the relevant notification. And many of them, they claim the country of origin, the related benefit, FTA benefit, etc. and recordatory, but they're not uploading the documents. And there is a large number of requests for the amendments as well. This is my observation, and we had a discussion with some of the people. So the first and foremost requirement from the stakeholder side, the customs brokers as well as the importers, is to ensure proper documentation, correct filing of the bill of entry, flawless, and the description is given properly, so that the requirement for amendments comes down, and it will pave the way for early assessment because there will be less number of queries. Further, now everybody virtually knows with the after almost 4 months of initiation of this faceless assessment, at least in Bangalore area, I'm very happy that people are quite well aware what documents they need to upload and how to upload. But the Bangalore center is receiving documents from elsewhere, and Bangalore imported goods, the documents are landing up at some other faceless assessment group. What I find is people are not uploading the necessary documents, and when the query is raised, they are supplementing the documents, but they do not know how to link up with the document filed earlier. There is a two-stage process when the additional documents are submitted. First, through e-Sanchit, at the time of initial filing, they submit, so it will automatically take it along with the bill of entry. But when they are submitting the additional documents, in the first phase they upload, second they need to link up with the relevant bill of entry. Otherwise, to them, they feel that they uploaded the relevant documents in response to the query raised, but the officer who is assessing is not able to see the documents. Then that is prompting a second or repeated queries. Thereafter, they try to find out the method and then link it up. Unless they link up the additional document submitted, it is not accessible to the concerned or assessing officer. So the fundamental requirement is to ensure that in the initial stages itself, all the fields are filled properly, description is given correctly, self-assessment is proper, documents are exhaustive so that there is no scope for asking for any relevant documents. And even after that, in case there are queries which we should not have been there, I would like to be flagged, and our contact numbers, emails, WhatsApp number, everything is available in the public domain. And we should be flagged, we should be informed about such specific instances so that we will examine them and suitably advise the officers and maybe even beyond. And the general feeling is that unless they go and physically approach the officer and explain a particular product or narrate their version, the assessment will not be done. So this, I think this mindset should go both from, I'm honestly saying that both from the officer side as well as from the stakeholder side. Even though everything is online, including the amendment is made, functionality is made online, still people wanted to come and meet the officer, which we are discouraging. We want everything completely on the electronic mode. All communication should be through electronic mode, and all documents should be submitted through the e-Sanchit, so that the assessment is done in a proper manner, in an objective manner, and that will ensure speediness. If you want your expedited assessment by physically meeting or contacting some other location, your counterpart, and then making them to approach the concerned officer or contacting some senior officers, this will not work. It may work if a particular thing is unreasonably delayed, we need to find out and then resolve. Maybe we'll be able to do it in few cases, but such situation should not arise at all. When everything is pakka from both ends, things will work. That is the way system is designed. Whatever little systemic changes required, like we suggested that more than one assistant commissioner should be mapped to the system in every customs location, so that more bills can be processed and simultaneously the bills can be processed. That has been accepted, and recently the system has been fine-tuned. There were other issues like the bills of entry of a particular group are landing at FAGs where such products are never imported at all. All these issues are being identified and they are being addressed, And by 31st, I am sure once pan-India phased assessment is implemented, the system will be tuned in such a manner that invariably the bills will be assessed, will be marked to a particular customs location only in respect of the commodities which are generally imported in that particular place, not necessarily be the bills in respect of the same place but from elsewhere. And recently, we in the group 3, NAC 3, we deliberated upon and gave a suggestion that the bills of entry in respect of the precious metals and diamonds should not come to every location, because we don't have the necessary expertise and the valuers. That was readily agreed, and a separate group is now created called 3A. Why I'm citing these examples is both the Directorate of Systems, the policy wing, and the decision makers at the highest level in the board office are constantly receiving the suggestions from the field, and wherever it is valid and which will help the cause of the faceless assessment and will ensure ease of doing business, they are immediately being implemented and they are put in place. So I can assure you, all the stakeholders, that the system is rapidly evolving, and we will certainly ensure that the faceless assessment will be a very successful venture, and all the stakeholders, it will be a win-win situation for everybody, both the department as well as every possible stakeholder, every single stakeholder. And we also come across the general impression that too many queries are being raised. First, let me mention that what are the bills which are going for the faceless assessment? It is the non-facilitated bills of entry. RMS has already credited 70 to 75% of the bills of entry, and there was no requirement of any assessment. Whatever bills of entry which are being marked for the faceless assessment are those where certain degree of risk is perceived. Therefore, it is the bounden duty of the assessing officer to thoroughly scrutinize and satisfy themselves the correctness of the self-assessment, and in case of any issue, either in relation to the classification or the benefit claim under any notification or an FTA or under CARATA or the valuation, certainly he has to raise a query. And the general impression is, earlier we used to go and explain, sir, that is getting over and all that. But now, if we have to achieve the objectiveness, and if we have to achieve impartiality and transparency, the faceless assessment is the only solution. This system is a next generation system of assessment which will protect the interest of every stakeholder, including the revenue. So let us work for the cause of the success of the faceless assessment. I request all the stakeholders to take care of the issues from their end, ensure the correctness and completeness of the documentation, so that the assessment is speedy and smooth. Let me tell you, the number of references which we are receiving in the immediately after the second phase. During first phase, we did not realize, when there was first phase assessment introduced between only Chennai and Bangalore, there was no problem and it was going on smooth. In the second phase, when more locations were introduced, we started getting, and the number of calls which I was getting were to the tune of about 20 per day, and a large number of emails and references. Now today, I can proudly say that the calls have come down, the emails have come down, and the references have come down, and the importers and customs brokers are also, they are getting accustomed very well to the new system, and this is a very good sign. So I think we all should work for the complete success of faceless assessment. And if there is any specific issue, please raise up in another next 5 minutes. Otherwise, I would like to take leave of you, and still we can receive your concerns by mail or WhatsApp, and we can, even BCIC can collect them and forward to us. We'll examine them, and wherever there is a genuine issue, we are here to certainly address that. And in case it is not an issue or needs clarification, we'll immediately respond.
Thank you. So thank you very much, sir. I have only one question from one Mr. Bharat DM. He's been asking quite some time. Shyam, can you please unmute him? Bharat DM,
Yes,
a
sir.
question is raised his hand. Please.
Please go ahead.
Bharat, you can talk. Hello, Bharat, you can talk. Hello. Is Mr. Bharat there?
Hi. Hello. Good
Yeah,
evening, sir.
please.
Yes, please go ahead.
Good evening, sir. This is Bharat from Dynamatic Technologies Limited. In this scheme, sir, job work allowed for overseas and DTSL.
He's answering.
Mr. Bharat, can you reserve this question for next, after 5 minutes you can ask this? And
Yes, sir.
I thought we are dealing with the face assessment, and I like to accommodate my schedule. And
If there are any members who would like to ask other than the inbound,
before somebody makes up their mind, I thought I should tell you one more recent development. That is, we have deployed officers beyond the office hours by roster, even on holidays, public holidays, and all Saturdays customs is working. Even on Sunday, there will be a complement of officers working for taking care of the assessment. And in any way, examination is working even 24/7, and there is going on smooth. So I thought I'll just give that piece of information to all the members participating.
Sir, one of the questions always some of the customers, agents, and other people say, sir, the demurrage is very high. Well, I know it's a policy decision. They feel that demurrage is one area where they have to pay a lot of money. Is there something we can do on that?
That is a commercial aspect of the custodians and the terminal operators, and we have no say, and we cannot comment on that. So I think Sivanna wants to say something.
Shivanna, I think somebody can unmute him. Yeah. So, Shyam, you can unmute Shivanna. Shivanna, are you there?
Rupata speaking.
Good evening, Sivanna, go ahead.
You can talk, Mr. Shivanna.
Good evening, sir.
Shivanna.
Chief Commissioner has already highlighted everything regarding the faceless related. I think that is sufficient for the audience to know about the faceless issues happening in the departmental side, sir.
Thank you, Sivanna. So thank you all, and Mr. Ravi.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Parsuram,
Yes.
President, Mr. Ravi,
Mr. Bose.
Mr. Bose Nair, and my colleague Bharat Singh, Amitesh Bharat Singh. Thank you very much for organizing this excellent outreach program with regard to the inbound manufacturing. And I request my colleague Amitesh Bharat Singh to continue till whatever time possible from your end. In fact, Mr. Bharat Singh is not well. He is quarantining at home, but still accept my request, and then, of course, your request, and then he's participating. And I thank him very much for his participation today. And I thank all the members who have participated. And there is, we will be extremely happy to receive your worries, suggestions, comments, and our ID, etc. are available. Please feel free to send it. We have helped us at the Chief Commissioner's office here in Bangalore. Our email ID is ccu-cusblr@nic.in. That is available in our website. And I already mentioned our WhatsApp number. And in addition, if there are any further concerns, you can also pen down your thoughts and then send it. And we will be extremely happy to address concerns and issues. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thanks. Thank you very much, sir, for your.
Thank you, sir. Thanks.
Thanks. I think, Mr. Amitesh, you can continue. You tell us how much time. I know you are on the quarantine.
I'll take
another 5-10
about
minutes. Another 5-10 minutes.
5-10 minutes is, I think, what I can devote to you. I have tried to answer most of the questions here.
Please, please.
So continuing from where I had left, because in bond manufacturing, you can also procure goods domestically, including capital goods. So if I mean, from the question, it's not obvious whether the good which is to be sent for repair, being a capital good, is of indigenous origin or a foreign origin. So in case it is of indigenous origin, then of course you can always resort to Rule 45 of the CGST rules and have it repaired. Okay, so that's a very clear answer that I'm giving you there. Somebody asked about, whether the SEZ could be billed in Indian rupees, right? So I have replied to that, and I'll read out the reply. So basically, I've said that you refer to circular number 88 of 2019, which was there issued in the GST. And it very clearly has stated position on this issue, that whether you can or you cannot bill to an SEZ in terms of an India rupee. The reply has been made its very clear reply on that, right? Then somebody asked about input-output norms, whether somebody has to approve the input-output norms. No, sir. Input-output norms is to be declared by you, the entity concerned. As I told you, it is required because ultimately it is required only for a proper accounting. Now remember one thing, that from whatever regime that we had in customs earlier, we have moved to a self-assessment regime in 2011, and it's a system of record-based controls. So input-output norms have been prescribed just for your convenience, so that you are able to account for whatever imported goods you have brought in, warehouse them, and are using them for manufacture and other processes. So it's you who has to declare them. You don't require anybody's approval on that. But of course, based on the input-output norms, your records would be checked, and you would be accountable for whatever manner of record keeping you would have at that moment in time. So in case of now, basically, somebody asked me that in case of a bonded manufacturing situation, if the goods are being sent back because they have not been sold, would the basic customs duty be refunded? The whole issue is, if it's a situation of a bonded manufacturing situation and we are talking about warehouse goods, remember one thing, that the moment you've entered into them into a warehouse, on these goods, the duty payment has been deferred. There has not been any duty which has been paid back. And if they are being exported again outside the country, there is no duty liability required to be paid. Those deferred duties are waived. So where is the question of any refund of any, because there is no BCD which has been paid, or for that matter, any customs duty. Hold on. Now, let me make it, basically people are kind of, mixing up the issue between this and the earlier situation of the EOU, ESTP that was there, right? The very clear position that I would like to emphasize here is that with reference to circular number 35 of 2016, dated 29th July 2016, there is a para 4 which reads, for the purposes of notification 44 of 2016, what it says essentially is, because of the consequences of changes that we have brought about in 2016, if you remember, in 2016, the entire warehousing provisions were revamped. As a consequence of these changes, the units which units? EOUs, ESTPs, STPIs stand delicensed warehouses under the Customs Act with effect from 13th August 2016. They shall continue to adhere to the provisions of the notification 52 of 2003, Customs and other FTP, HBP, and other applicable notifications. So what has happened as a consequence of this particular circular, the particular changes we brought about in terms of notification number 44 of 2016, in terms of whatever we did in the budget of 16, is that the EOUs, ESTPs, etc., even though at that particular moment in time they would have taken out also a license or a permission under section 65, those with effect from 13th of August 20, delicensed. I mean, those are effectively treated as null and void. So EOU scheme, you must remember, is a scheme which is basically there in the FTP Act, Chapter 6 of the FTP Act. So that is what applies. That is what the customs also, kind of refers for its bonding conditions. Now, people have been repeatedly asking what is the difference between an EOU scheme and this in-bond manufacturing scheme. So I'll just share one slide with you. And I think that's about maybe the second last to the last activity that I would be able to do here. So here, is it visible?
No, I think Sham. Okay, now it's visible, sir.
Okay, so these are the changes which have, these are the differences between an EOU and an in-bond manufacturing scheme, which I have tried to capture in a small capsule. The biggest difference being that there is no export commitment that we are looking at from you in terms of the Section 65 scheme. There is no NFE requirement. There is no requirement of you earning any net foreign exchange. You could as well. So basically what happens if there is an NFE requirement, to that extent, your clearances, production and clearances to the domestic tariff area somewhat get restricted. But under the Section 65 scheme, we have absolutely no restrictions. This is the scheme which is basically there to support the Make in India scheme. It's a scheme with a much larger ambition, as Mr. Ravi, I think you had mentioned in the opening remarks that you made. It's a scheme which is simply not focused on export promotion. So these are the things which are there. Have a look of it. If possible, please do take a screenshot of it, and you can always look at it later. Now, SEZ scheme is a different scheme. It's under Chapter 7 of the FTP Act. These are the schemes which are 6, 7 of the FTP Acts. Now, basically what happens is SEZs exist inside a notified SEZ area, right? Somebody was asking whether I can, take out an in-bond manufacturing facility for an entity within an SEZ. No, sir, you cannot at the moment, because SEZ, the area itself is notified. For people who are not in an SEZ, it's still possible for you to kind of, take out a Section 65 license for premises which fulfill the requirements, which are able to satisfy the licensing licensing commissioner. But as far as SEZs are concerned, because SEZs are located in a notified area, you probably do need a denotification for that particular area in which you are located. So it's a long and extensive process. It would not be so easy, right? So that's the reply that I have. I think I've covered most of the replies here. Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have spent some time with you. So do take care and stay safe. And thank you for having me here. I do look forward to the problems. I mean, let me assure you one thing, that the Bangalore Customs, the Chief Commissioner, both my colleague commissioners are hard at work, trying to solve a lot of the problems relating to faceless assessments, and so are all my colleagues all over the country. This is a new thing. It would be somewhat unsettling, and no matter how much I say that it's only it's unsettling in the beginning, or only a small proportion people are getting affected. As long as there is pain, we shall continue to try and work to resolve the issues. We are hard at work. Do continue to make the feedback to us, and we shall try and try and make the best out of all the suggestions and all the flags that you are raising. We should try and solve them as quickly and as fast as possible. So that's our commitment from the Customs Department. It has been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ravi.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Amitesh. I am really sorry. I never knew you were on quarantine or whatever. Now,
It's my PS who has turned positive on Monday. So I've deliberately put myself in a quarantine. So I bear a responsibility to do that.
Our good wishes are there with you, sir. I'm sure you keep strong, you keep healthy. We are all with you. Our good wishes are with you. And as far as the queries which have been raised, I'm sure that we will consolidate all these queries and we'll send a representation to the Customs Department so that you can answer those for the a number of members could not get their queries clarified. And I'm also, a few companies have also asked us that they are sending a detailed note. I'll be sharing with you, sir. I think
I have recently released, just to kind of tell you, Mr. Ravi, there was a set of very detailed questions, about 40 or 45 of them, which were posed to me in the EEPC webinar on this particular issue. So I've answered all of them, and I have released the the PowerPoint presentation with all the replies in it. If possible, you could request the EEPC to share it with you.
Sure.
So that should take care of, I think, the most of the questions which are going to come. So that's the thing. Do send a copy to me at dgts-bangalore@gov.in whenever you're marking a issue to the Chief Commissioner.
Sure, sir.
So we'll try and reply to most of them. Thank you. Take care.
Okay, 1 minute, sir. So now I will request our co-chairman silently, who's been looking into, he has done a lot of work along with me for this particular event. Mr. Bose Nair, can you please give the vote of thanks for this particular webinar? You can put on your video.
Ravi. Thanks, Ravi.
I want people to see you, sir.
Can't you see me?
Now, yes.
Good. Good evening. On behalf of the Bangalore Chamber, it's a privilege for me to propose vote of thanks to the eminent speakers. The simplified procedures on inbound manufacturing, faceless assessment and appeals will bring a momentous change. Our sincere thanks to Chief Commissioner of Customs, Mr. Srinivas, IRS, and the Additional Director General, Mr. Amitesh Singh, for sparing their valuable time to educate the taxpayers on faceless assessment and relevant topics related to indirect tax. I know Amitesh is addressing the participant. This is the second time where I chaired the meeting, requesting all the stakeholders to support the initiative of the government to ease the procedures. Special thanks to our President, Mr. Parasuram, Mr. Ravi, Chairman, International Business Expert Committee, and the Secretariat for their valuable support.
And also to Tata Hitachi. Tata Hitachi.
Oh, Tata Hitachi for supporting us for this event. Before I conclude, wish you a happy Navaratri, stay safe and stay blessed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Amitesh, take care.